As you might recall from earlier, I had a massive reversion back to Catholicism through Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was a remarkable time of intense prayer, learning, and fasting, and I had a zeal for my faith that, to be honest, I haven't truly been able to duplicate since then. Maybe it was because I was younger, eager, and had very few other things to occupy my mind. Who knows? The fact of the matter is that I was young, motivated, and had the free time to go very deep into studying my Catholic faith. Like most reverts and converts, I read a mountain of apologetics books. I especially loved reading about modern-day conversion-reversion stories from apologists. Authors like Patrick Madrid, Mark Shea, and Devin Rose, and others wove apologetics into their reversion stories so seamlessly. It was like I was attending a graduate-level theology course while allowing the God-given graces of knowledge and wisdom to inundate my own life. Both my mind and my heart were convinced, but I wanted more. So I started reading about the saints. I studied the lives of St. Pope John Paul II, Archbishop Fulton Sheen, St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, St. Augustine, St. Paul, St. Therese, St. Thomas Aquinas, and pretty much anyone else whose story could teach me about my faith and, more importantly, how to live as Christ lived. The more I studied, the more I discovered that each holy man and woman I studied had specific spiritual traits in common. And the strongest of these common threads was their devotion to Our Lady. In this video, I want to highlight 3 saints in particular who practice Marian devotion in their own unique ways. My hope is that you can compare your own devotion to Our Lady to those practiced by the saints. And perhaps you'll find that your ways of honoring the Blessed Mother can be edified by the imitation of the spiritual masters who urge us to come to know the Virgin Mary to the most profound depths that we are able. After all, it was Jesus who knew her best, and it was the saints who imitated Jesus best, and it is our challenge to follow these holy examples in honoring the woman, God's mother, and our own spiritual mother. I'd like to begin with St. Dominic. St. Dominic is the founder of the Dominican order, also known as the Order of Preachers. His life was dedicated to prayer, study, community life, and preaching. He, like St. Francis of Assisi, created a mendicant order, which means they weren't technically part of a diocese. This provided them with the freedom to travel about the world and preach and save souls regardless of jurisdiction. As a result, these well-traveled friars learned a great deal about the state of the Church and how it related to the world at the turn of the 11th century. One of the problems facing the Church was the Albigensian heresy, which, in a nutshell, basically believed that the world is split between 2 principles: the good, which pertains to the spiritual realm, and the bad, which consists of everything that is physical or material. St. Dominic knew that God was the creator of all things, which includes the spiritual and material parts of the universe. In an effort of heroic virtue and love for the confused Albigensian heretics, Dominic spent much of his life attempting to convert them using only his orating skills, his remarkable mind, and his complete dependence on God's grace. After years of constant study, witty discourse, and the establishment of an army of missionary brothers dedicated to this very issue, Dominic saw no success. He was distraught and forlorn, hopeless and desperate for God to intercede in his work. Then, one night in 1208, he went into a forest in southern France right at the epicenter of the heretical movement. He pleaded with God to provide him with what he needed to convert the Albigensians. After 3 days of prayer and fasting, 3 angels appeared in the sky carrying a ball of fire, and when they disappeared, Our Lady appeared to him with a rosary, telling the priest that he must preach her Psalter to be successful against the heretics. The Psalter, if you didn't know, was the repetition of all 150 psalms that the early Christians once prayed on a daily basis. To make it easier on those who were unable to attend these services due to work schedules or illiteracy, they replaced the 150 Psalms with 150 Ave Marias, or Hail Marys, that Catholics would pray on their own time. This became known as the Marian Psalter, which would evolve into what we currently know as the Rosary. From that day on, St. Dominic led with Mary. He prayed the Rosary daily and encouraged his fellow Dominican brothers to do the same. He preached it to Catholics and heretics alike, and as a result, The Albigensian heresy was overcome completely in the year 1213, only 5 years after Our Lady's apparition to St. Dominic. Since then, the Rosary has been attributed to countless miracles, conversions, reversions, and even the end of wars. It has been said that aside from the Mass and the Divine Office, the Rosary is the most powerful prayer we can pray. It has been compared to a lifeline, a life preserver, a weapon, a shield, and my personal favorite, a whip that drives away evil. St. Dominic knew its power, and as such, his devotion to the Rosary became the crux of his holiness. St. Louis de Montfort is next on our list of exceptional Marian devotees. Like St. Dominic, St. Louis de Montfort was a Dominican who prayed the Rosary with intense fervor. His book, The Secret of the Rosary, is, in my opinion, the best book written on the topic. In it, he centers the reader not only on the mysteries within the prayer, but he also drowns you into full submission to Mary's spiritual intercession. It is a masterpiece that should be required reading for all Catholics who desire to pray the Rosary with clarity. De Montfort didn't stop there. His desire to love Our Lady grew to such an extent that he thought it necessary to do more than honor her through the recitation of the Rosary alone. He wanted to dedicate not just his words and contemplative prayers to her. He wanted to give his entire life. He wanted everything to be hers. His desires, his meritorious acts, his very essence had to be one with her. So he created a means to consecrate himself completely to her. It is called total consecration to Jesus through Mary. The process consists of a 33-day preparation period in which a person purges themselves of evil desires, builds up their knowledge of Our Lady, and spends deliberate time developing a spiritual relationship with the Blessed Mother, with the end result being a total giving of oneself to her. This is how de Montfort explains total consecration in his classic, True Devotion. Mary is the safest, easiest, shortest, and most perfect way of approaching Jesus. The more a person joins himself to her, the more effectively she unites him to God. When one consecrates themselves to Mary, every prayer request and every meritorious act is given first to Mary, who then presents it to our Lord. She, being the mediatrix of all his graces, brings him our needs, our thanks, and our praise in a way that is prepared for his liking. No one else can possibly know how else to submit to him more perfectly than Mary. So, she acts as the perfect intercessor, the go-between that unites us closer to God than we could ever be through our own efforts. St. Louis de Montfort knew this, and as a result of his devotion to Our Lady, millions of souls imitating him have been led to heaven by the hand of Our Lady, the one that they have consecrated themselves to. St. Maximilian Kolbe is most well known for his heroic sacrifice during this time in Auschwitz. If you don't recall, he took the place of a man who was condemned to certain death. Kolbe survived several days of starvation attempts from the Nazis, and then died by lethal injection. While Kolbe's death was certainly a great light in the darkness of Nazi Germany, his life was an equally brilliant beam, and this beam was directed to his love of all loves, Mary. His devotion to Our Lady was second only to Christ's, and in his writings he expressed with perfect prose this love. He once wrote, "The Immaculate must be introduced into the hearts of men, so that she may erect within them the throne of her Son, so that she may rouse them to a knowledge of him, and inflame them with love for the most sacred heart of Jesus." The Franciscans of the Immaculate, founded in 1970, took Kolbe's writings along with other Marianites like Montfort, and became the only religious community to take what is known as the Marian vow. This vow is essentially a step above total consecration, and it can only be taken by Franciscans of the Immaculate. Kolbe explains it rather boldly like this: "We are Mary's, of the Immaculate, unlimitedly hers, perfectly hers. We are, as it were, her very self. We want to belong to the Immaculate to the point that not only nothing may remain in us that is not of her, but that we may become annihilated, as it were, in her, changed in her, transubstantiated in her, that she herself may remain." When I first read that, I was shocked. I found it to be on the verge of heretical. But as I contemplated it and read more of Kolbe's thoughts on the Marian vow, I came to see it in a new light. I came across Kolbe's interpretation of St. Louis de Montfort's thought on these inhibitions. He said, "To those who frivolously consider union with the Blessed Mother as an impediment to union with Jesus, St. Louis de Montfort, that great teacher of Marian devotion and consecration, responds with clarity. Could it ever be possible that she, who found grace before God for everyone in general, and for each in particular, might hinder a soul from finding the great grace of union with Jesus Christ? The Divine Mary, entirely lost in God, is not an obstacle to reaching divine union for perfect souls. To the contrary, as there has never been anyone in the past, so there shall never be anyone in the future who can be more efficacious than Mary, most holy, in assisting us in this great work. This is true regarding the grace that she will communicate to us for this purpose, as well as the solicitude for which she will ever preserve us from the illusions and deceits of the evil one." Mary is our mystical mother, the one whose love for us is only shadowed by God's. In her caring arms, she protects us, guides us, and teaches us how to become more like her Son, Jesus. This is why every saint had a particular, unique love for Our Lady, because she knew how to inspire within each of them the means by which they could achieve holiness in their own particular way. You are a saint in the making. How will your devotion to Our Lady be manifested in your achievement of holiness? She, your loving mother, is waiting for you with open arms and the perfect plan for your salvation. But this plan is not hers, nor is it yours. It's her Son's.